Thank you. Good afternoon. As a performing musician and an academic, my interest is in bringing to light the musical cross-currents of the Indo-British encounter during the first part of the 20th century, the dying decades of the Raj, through the lens of decolonization. This work has resulted in my first book, Resonances of the Raj, India in the English Musical Imagination, 1897 to 1947, in which I reveal some unexpected minglings of peoples, musics, and ideas that raise questions about Englishness, about the nature of empire, and about the fixedness of identity. Through extensive archival research, I've uncovered a rich Indian musical climate from which British composers and musicians found inspiration. Inayat Khan, with his royal musicians shown here, exemplifies something of this context. Ultimately, what I show in a series of case studies is that although the British did conquer India, India also conquered them. The British were seduced by India, and some of their most interesting musical creations were shaped in enduring ways by the culture and sounds of the subcontinent and its peoples. What I will do in the remaining time is to open a window into the fascinating cross-cultural interactions of two musicians whose names are little known, but whose work presaged that of post-colonial Indo-Western fusion. One of the most significant personalities in this story is Maud McCarthy, an Irish musician whose work has been unjustly consigned to historical oblivion. Upon her return from India in 1909, McCarthy gained renown as the earliest practicing authority of Indian music in Europe, lecturing at universities and top schools, singing in many different Indian languages, and performing on the Saraswati Veena. John Folds, a composer gaining renown at the time, became Maud's soulmate and husband. So he was in a unique position to learn about Indian music, and he didn't waste his opportunity. His most original and superbly crafted pieces, among them the 3 mantras for orchestra composed in 1930, came out of Indian traditions, both musical and mythological. The third of John Folds' mantras bears the subtitle, "To Invoke the Rakshasas," forest demons who attack seers, sages, and yogis. In the Ramayana, they are led by their 10-headed king Ravana, as seen here. Folds generates the entire piece from a distinctive Carnatic or South Indian Melakarta scale. Folds' entire piece is also based on a 7-beat repeating rhythmic ostinato or mantra seen here, which you can listen for in the opening passage of this powerful work. This tremendously exciting Indian-inspired music failed to resonate with the rather stiff upper lip of the English national vibration at the time, and the BBC and other pillars of the British musical establishment marginalised Folds and McCarthy. He was virtually excluded from all official channels of musical promotion. So, Folds and McCarthy set sail for India again in 1935, where he became the first Western composer to write idiomatic scores for Indian ensemble, to transcribe classical Indian music for orchestra, to create an Indo-Western ensemble, and the only composer to forsake his homeland for India. The enthusiastic Indian reaction to this innovative ensemble in newspaper reviews, articles, and letters from people across the land suggests that it's hard to write off these musical activities taking place in colonial India as simply imperialist or ethnocentric. Indeed, less than a decade later, Folds' ensemble became the model for none other than Ravi Shankar, whose celebrated East-West fusion of the 1960s began when he took up music director at All India Radio in Delhi after independence in 1947. Thus, it is through this kind of musical inquiry that a process of cross-cultural exchange, better known in the post-colonial period, becomes visible for the first time. I will leave you today with a collaborative John Folds and Maud McCarthy composition, whose melody, Maud explained, is in a style suggested to her on hearing Rabindranath Tagore sing to her in her home when he visited London in 1912. This is the Song of Ram Das of 1935, whose double reed sonority, use of the ghungru, and subtle ornamental touches in the melody are hallmarks of Indian inspiration. Thank you very much.